Today, we are going to look at the story of Quibi, a company that had everything, every advantage, every resource, every reason to succeed, and lost it all in less than 7 months. In 2018, two of the most powerful people in entertainment had an idea so compelling that Disney wrote them a check. Warner Brothers wrote them a check. Goldman Sachs wrote them a check before a single second of content existed. $1.75 billion raised before launch. They had Liam Hemsworth, Chrissy Teigen, Chance the Rapper, and Academy Award-winning directors competing to work with them. Every major publication called it the future of entertainment. Wall Street believed it. Silicon Valley believed it. Hollywood believed it. And then, on October 21, 2020, Quibi sent an email to every user. The subject line was 4 words: Quibi is shutting down. Not pivoting, not restructuring, not merging with a competitor, shutting down. $1.75 billion, 196 days, gone. And everyone was asking the same question. How? How does something with every advantage fail this completely, this fast? That is exactly what we are going to find out today. To understand Quibi, you first need to understand the people behind it. Jeffrey Katzenberg was not a gambler. He was a proven winner. In the 1980s, he ran Disney's movie studio and greenlit The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and The Lion King. Then he co-founded DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen. His personal cut when the company sold? $400 million. His partner was Meg Whitman. She joined eBay in 1998 when nobody knew what eBay was, led it through its IPO, and built it into a multi-billion-dollar company. Then she ran Hewlett-Packard for 7 years. 2 legends, 1 company. And a vision that made complete sense on paper. People spend 5 to 10 minutes every day waiting for coffee, the subway, a line to move. What if someone created premium content with real budgets, real stars, and real production value specifically for those stolen moments? They called it Quick Bites, Quibi. On April 6, 2020, Quibi went live. In the first 3 days, 910,000 people signed up for the free trial. Everything was working exactly as planned, until it wasn't. 3 months after launch, those 910,000 free trials started to expire. And Sensor Tower, one of the most respected app analytics firms in the world, published a number. Of all the people who tried Quibi for free, only 8% decided to pay. 8%. 92 out of every 100 people who experienced the product decided it was not worth $5 a month. For context, Disney Plus, which launched just 5 months earlier with a 7-day trial instead of 90, converted 11%, and Disney Plus had 10 million signups in their first 24 hours. Quibi had projected 7.4 million paying subscribers by end of year 1. They were on track for fewer than 2 million. Less than 30% of their own projection. But the real turning point was not the conversion rate. It was a single product decision made months before launch. Quibi could only be watched on a phone, not on a TV, not on a laptop, not even cast to a bigger screen. If you wanted to show your partner a clip, you couldn't. If you wanted to watch at your desk during lunch, you couldn't. If you wanted to screenshot and share it, you couldn't. Katzenberg called this a feature. He called it the intimacy of the phone. The market called it a deal breaker. Before we go further, I want to ask you something, because most people who analyze this story get it wrong. Was this a product failure, a leadership failure, or something much deeper? Drop your answer in the comments. I'll respond to the best ones. And stay with me, because the real reason Quibi failed is not what most people think. When you strip away the noise, Quibi made 3 strategic mistakes. Any one of them might have been survivable. Together, they were fatal. Mistake 1.
$1.75 billion from Disney, Warner, and Sony sounded like validation. But those studios were not betting because users had proven they wanted Quibi. They were protecting themselves, buying a seat at the table in case mobile streaming became the next big thing. Nobody had truly tested whether real people would pay for premium, short-form shows on their phones. They assumed demand existed because it made sense on a whiteboard. Confidence is not validation. Mistake 2. The commute market was real. People with 5 to 10 minutes of idle time. But that audience already had free alternatives: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Quibi asked them to pay $5 a month to replace something they already got for free. Then, 3 weeks after launch, the pandemic hit. Quibi's entire behavioral premise, watching during your commute, lunch break, or time out of the house, disappeared overnight. And in April 2020, weeks after lockdowns began, Katzenberg said publicly, "COVID-19 has not hurt us at all." He was wrong. More importantly, he was in denial. Mistake 3. Quibi was built for young, mobile-first consumers, people who live on their phones and consume content in short bursts. But it was designed by a 64-year-old and a 69-year-old who had never been that demographic. The phone-only restriction, the inability to screenshot for social sharing, and the confusion around Turnstile were not just technical failures, they were leadership failures. Decisions made for users they had never been and never consulted. On October 21, 2020, 196 days after launch, Quibi shut down completely. Katzenberg spent the final weeks calling every major media company he knew: Facebook, NBC Universal, everyone. Nobody made an offer. The assets were eventually sold for about $100 million. $1.75 billion in, $100 million out. Less than 6 cents returned for every dollar invested. 700 employees lost their jobs. Dozens of original shows, some genuinely excellent, were deleted. The content simply ceased to exist.
So what is the real lesson here? Not, don't build a startup. Not, don't raise money. Those are the wrong takeaways. The lesson is this: Katzenberg and Whitman were two of the most accomplished executives alive. They had decades of proof that their instincts were right, and that track record became their blind spot. They were so certain they were right that they never stopped to ask the most important question in business: does anyone actually want this to pay for it? Not, does the logic make sense? Not, do smart investors believe in it? Not, can we build it? Does the real customer, the human being who will open their wallet, actually want this enough to pay for it? That question could have been answered with 100 test users and 3 months of feedback. Instead, it cost $1.75 billion to find the answer was no. Every business decision you make, every product you launch, every service you offer starts with that question. Not on a whiteboard, in the real world, with real people, before you spend a single dollar. That is the story of Quibi. $1.75 billion, 196 days, and one question nobody asked. If this case study made you think differently about how businesses make decisions, subscribe. Because next week, we are looking at a company that invented the technology that eventually destroyed it. A company that held the future in its hands and chose not to use it. I will see you there.